But there's just no way that Australian consumers are going to buy the concept of a luxury Chinese car. It's just...
Oxymoron.
Hi, I'm Andy.
And I'm Roger.
And welcome to The Middle,
where we try to have thoughtful conversations
about awkward topics
on our search to find the middle.
We're going to give you last week's news today.
It's a slogan we should put on a t-shirt.
Stop touching her!
I am tonight announcing my candidacy.
Taylor Swift. Look, my biggest issue with marriage is that I think that it's a fundamentally flawed institution that is built on the oppression of women.
I will not be lectured about sexism and misogyny.
Having truly rational conversations about controversial issues is risky these days.
Andy.
Roger.
How you doing?
I'm pretty good. How about yourself?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty good. I've chose to invest back into the show with a bit of new tech, so that's always a bit of a sugar hit.
All right, talk us through. What have you got?
Well, like anything, when we started the podcast, when we started The Middle, we funded the tech ourselves, so of course we didn't go crazy. And I always thought to myself, if we carried through in a meaningful amount of time and connected with our base, I would always upgrade my mic. So I am now speaking to you from the same mic that many of our podcast idols use, the Shure SM7B. And probably the audience can tell no difference whatsoever, but I have it.
All right, so my question is, how much of this is about, in your mind, superior quality sound as opposed to like, nah, I need to have the best golf club. I need to have the same golf club as Tiger Woods. Like,
if you're asking a value question, I think that the value of our pod mics was impossible to beat because they were so cheap and they sounded so good for the price. So you're never going to beat that value equation.
Well, we should throw in a few other factors. We did have to make several $100s worth of other purchases to get the pod mics to work, so it wasn't quite as...
Yeah. Although there now is a USB pod mic that wasn't around when we started the show that I heard sounds incredible as well. So you wouldn't have to buy all the other equipment to connect it to the computer. But yes, I mean, look, I think with anything, when you step into a new category of product or whatever it is, golf clubs, tennis rackets, recording equipment, cameras, there is a satisfaction with the idea, the attraction of kind of quality or, the craftsmanship around it. And I think that plays a role too, right? Like you can get satisfaction from the craft of certain objects, and sometimes they don't always increase the performance. But saying that, like, let's not poo-poo. This is a very long-standing, famous vocal microphone. So I don't want to kind of say that it's not worth the money either.
Okay, but like, I want to ask you a question, and I've already asked you this question before, so you should have a good answer. How long will the sugar hit of the excitement of these new items, make you feel good? Like how long until it wears off?
Look, I think you know the answer to that. It's not long, and I think that's only because it's the pre-sale and then the anticipation of the arrival of a new good is where the heaviest, like you're on the top of the roller coaster at that point. And then when you get it, really the only way is down. So I think that, you have a heightened sense of like wanting something and thinking, oh no, like why would I be able to get that? And then you go through those emotions of convincing yourself that this purchase is coming, and then you finally hit go, and then you've got the excitement of it arriving in the mail and unwrapping it and getting, seeing what it's all like. And then inevitably, the view, it either exceeds your expectations or it doesn't. But then that generally wears off, and it just becomes part of your kit, and your levels of excitement return to normal. Now, it's impossible to kind of say where it wears off for everyone. Like for me, it's definitely not. I'm not an impulse buyer in the way that, like, say, someone buys a T-shirt and they get that like sugar hit and the high, and then as soon as they get home, it just goes in the wardrobe. That's not generally my pattern. But like anything, you want to build on things, and I've found with my tendencies around buying and things like that, it comes in bursts, right? It comes in a bit of an ecosystem of interest that is in the top of my mind, and I like getting carried away on that kind of wave, right? I like getting riding the wave and then finding myself beached on the shore. of, being really interested in, and what comes with that too is like I learn a lot about the products. Like I learn a lot about all that stuff. Like I immerse myself in the culture of it all. Like whether it's recording studio, audio products, whether it's paraphernalia from my latest hobby, whatever it is, right? Like I think we've spoken about this before. I'm a hobby guy. So, and part of the attraction to it to me is the excitement of building yourself into that culture, learning about it, what's popular by your fellow hobbyists, what's not, where's the credit coming from? Like all of that stuff is part of the excitement that I think make life worth living.
All right. So you've actually helped me here, because I thought I was going to ask you a very provocative question by saying that in the past you've mentioned that you have like you enjoy being in like the beginner's mindset or whatever, and learning things and hobbies and all that stuff. But you brought it up, so it's fair game now. So my question to you is, do you think you genuinely have that beginner's mindset, or do you think it's more that like you just like having a new ecosystem of products that you can buy and like anticipate and be excited by? Yes. Isn't it just like, oh, now I can buy like a whole suite of cameras and accessories because like this month I'm into photography, right? And then next month, microphones, podcast gear, and like, because like everyone's the same. Like so this ain't a shot at you, but like literally everyone is like that, I think, one way or another.
No, well, I like to think of myself. I distinguish myself from that situation of I think a lot of people get carried away with something, but they don't immerse themselves in it. And you can always have a pot shot to someone around how long they keep up a hobby.
But surely the equipment must be like a key part of the appeal of a new hobby, right? Like it's like, oh, I'm going to get this piece of equipment and then I get to use it. Like it's going to be part of the appeal.
Of course it is. It's a really big part. But I think all I'm saying to back that up is that you are attracted to what the equipment will let you do, right? Like to me, it's not, if you take something like purely like collecting or something, like maybe you collect Pokemon cards or whatever. That's like the most extreme example of that, right? Like the act is kind of complete when you collect the card. When you own that rare Charizard or whatever Pokemon card it is, that's it. There's no utility. It's just actually, that's the most honest form of it, because you're like, all I want to do is own it. And after I own it, that's it. I'll lock it away in its glass cabinet and that's it. So I think that all I'm saying is that I tend to immerse myself in the hobby culture, and I love the idea of what each piece of gear or paraphernalia can unlock, if you know what I mean.
But then like, okay, so, and I want you to like dig deep into your subconscious here.
Mm-hmm.
Like when you shift from like one hobby to the next hobby, is it actually just that you've bought everything that you could possibly buy in that hobby ecosystem? So you need like the next. You know what I mean?
No, I don't think so actually, and the reason I say I don't think so is because I come back to my hobbies and I still want to buy more stuff. So it's not like I reach a point where I've maxed out, where I'm able to buy the gear that I want and there's nothing left to buy. It's more that the passion for using those items or whatever is redirected into whatever the latest hobby is. Right, so it's almost like a toy rotation. You know how they do that with kids, where they like rotate the toys. It's like that for me. Right?
That's only something rich kids have to do.
Oh, come on, kids nowadays have lots of toys.
Kmart.
Yeah, but it's that kind of thing, right? Like you redirect the energy, and I've said to you before on different episodes that I actually think that's a good thing.
All right, so we're talking a little bit about like hedonism today. So you know the treadmill, you know, like of never quite being satisfied, but like the chase of trying to get more things, accumulate more stuff. And like, we're obviously geared as like humans to, you know, enjoy or get some kind of hit, like dopamine hit. I don't know what it is anyway, but like we do get some joy, even as short-lived as it is, when someone knocks on the door, like the Amazon delivery driver knocks on the door with whatever the fuck you ordered. And like, but like it is very short-lived, right? But then you got to spend your money on something, right?
For some people, though, like for some people, I want to reiterate that there is utility to some of these things, right? And like, if you can judge something, most people judge whether something is a good purchase rather than a reckless, purchase of how much use you get out of it. Would you say?
Well, I think it's a little bit there's a little bit of noise though. Like I would say that if someone has like deliveries from Temu coming, several times a week, there's virtually nothing that has arrived that there's any long-term value from, right? There's like, oh, that's interesting that solar powered, like self-writing pen or something that I bought. Like they're gimmicks and they're not really, it's like the Minnesota. Like I don't think there's anything anyone's ever bought from Minnesota that, which is like, for anyone who doesn't know, like I think it's actually a Chinese retailer, but they sort of pass themselves off as Japanese. And they sell kind of quirky little stuff, right? And some of it's like has the veneer of being useful, but it's usually just shit products. It's like the what's that? The actual Japanese one, Daiso. Yeah, it's like a copy of that. But like then you'll buy, like I've like said before. I think I've said on this podcast, like there'll be a product that you buy. Like for me, it's like the Bose QC. I think the 35. I can't remember the numbers now, but anyway, it's this like the first pair of like noise cancelling headphones that I bought, like probably like almost 10 years ago, that I still use today. And in fact, like I've bought the successor model, but I still prefer the original ones that I bought. So you'll get those products, and there's like heaps of products like that where I'll stand out, like I'll say, hey, that was like a good buy. Like I got more value out of that than I thought I would.
Cost per wear, cost per use.
Yeah, it's high, but like. And that's like the utility piece. But I do think that like people are buying things for like the joy. It's like the joy of buying of like a new toy, a new item.
I think that acquisition
that does motivate people more than this will actually be useful in my life. Like I think it's rare to find those products.
Well, I mean, I think everyone's got their poison. I think if people are honest with themselves. It's just that I think of myself like I order from the full menu. So like I can get pleasure from a lot of different areas. Well, most people get stuck in their patterns where like I know a lot of people who their obsession and maybe fashion, like clothes, right? Clothes and shoes. And they just go nuts. And I'm sure when they buy it, they get that high. But where that high is coming from is that they think they're going to look good in that, right? And they can't wait to kind of make themselves look great, or whether they buy that new beauty product is about being attractive. So there's usually different motivations behind things, right? I think the really interesting one, and especially and like say the golf club, the same thing. It's like I'm going to get that new driver because it's going to let me excel at and get that 50 more yards on my drive or whatever. So there's this kind of like these lies that everyone tells themselves to justify the purchase, and I think that there's something also, I think, within the male mind that is like quite susceptible to collecting. I think this like idea of being a collector is where things really get out of control, because it becomes like they're honest with themselves, and it becomes this like the purpose is actually to acquire and to collect and catalog rather than actually get any kind of utility. They've done away with this idea of utility.
So again, not to put you on the spot, but I think you have a collection of sneakers. Talk us through that.
I have a collection of many things, actually. Some I tell you about, and some I don't tell you about. But I'm definitely susceptible to that idea of collecting. I know a lot of dudes that are. I think that I've recently, like very very recently, in the last 6 months, become a sneakerhead, and actually started to collect different types of sneakers that I've wanted. Back when, some of these are classic sneakers that I've wanted when I was a kid and couldn't afford them. And, I've bought like the glass cases for them, the Perspex cases that kind of swing open and they all sit there like a museum. And yeah, I think that to me is like a nostalgic thing, is maybe a bit of a repressed childhood thing to, people that could afford brand name things and Nikes and things like that when I couldn't. So maybe that's a little bit of that playing there. But yeah, there's a ton of things like that. I was the same with different alcohols. Like I've got a big whiskey collection. I have a fairly substantial knife collection. Cooking knives, by the way, not combat knives, like chef's knives and things like that. So I'm susceptible to that kind of thing, right? Like, and I do pick hobbies that have that same kind of tech or kit kind of vibe. I mean, let's turn the tables a little bit on you, because I think that, I've seen a bit of a switch in your consumption patterns where, growing up in high school, I think it was fair to say that you're quite tight or thrifty with your money, and just more from a kind of like you expected value. You didn't want to waste your hard-earned dollars. But I think as you've kind of grown and lent a bit more into the situation, and I've seen you kind of wrestle with them. You still have that initial wrestling with this idea of, oh no, I shouldn't do that or whatever, but you always end up doing it. So,
well, I
whether
think
it's camera gear or like hobby stuff, or lately cooking stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So there's definitely and actually, like I think I'm coming back to like the middle in some ways, because definitely growing up I was okay. So like let's look at the trajectory of life, right? You start off and you don't have much money, right? Because you're young and like you have a job working in like minimum wage job sort of thing. Like you're not making money, so you want the money to go further. So you're looking for ways to sort of stretch it and look for value.
But you got no responsibility or expenses either.
No, but you still don't have a lot of money, right? Because even if you don't have any expenses, the most you can earn when you're working at school or uni is like a couple $100 a week, right? Or back in the day, maybe it's different now. But so you've got to do your best, right? And if you want it all, as you do when you're young, you kind of can't have. You've got to kind of go a little bit more Chinese in terms of the products you buy than say European, or you know what I mean. So you do that, right? You go, oh, like this is awesome, like Chinese site that will sell me like these Japanese products like at half price. Like that's the vibe, right? Because that's like a sense of value, right? I think now as an adult, like where you have, then you in terms of the phases of life again, you have more responsibilities, like you have more like dependents, or you're trying to keep a household afloat, and then you just almost can't buy anything because at that stage, right? Then you start to get a little bit more disposable income again back into your household budget, and then you get to a point where actually you're quite comfortable, right? There's really no like the same budget constraint that had you like quite tight as a young'un. It's almost like you've got unlimited money in some ways when you're older. But now, like in the context of, cost of living, inflation, all that, it does, like, I've probably started thinking a little bit more about not making silly purchases. But like, you're right. Like, I think COVID was interesting because there was definitely like some dopamine hits associated with like the Amazon delivery driver. Like,
yeah.
You swing by with whatever I'd ordered. And of course you couldn't buy things that you would normally buy. Like you couldn't go to the pub or the restaurant, like, and spend.
And things are cheap, man. Like that's the other factor. Like things, when you open up Amazon,
but they're not cheap now though.
No, but they're still like, okay. When we were growing up, there wasn't Amazon, right? There was like some dodgy eBay where you may or may not get shanked online. But there wasn't like this reliable place you could go to that sold things significantly cheaper or had crazy reductions sporadically, that you could buy these purchases like much cheaper than like a JB Hi-Fi or these other places like that. That wasn't around. Like now, I think the internet shopping is on like steroids, right? And you've also got if you depending on how risque you want to go, you've got, like you said, Temu down one end and Alibaba, Express, eBay, all these places that you can go to scratch that itch. So if you're someone who is unsatisfied by your reality in whatever sense, you're naturally, and you have low resilience, you're naturally drawn towards these online shopping sites like a moth to a flame, right? There's a reason why when people have hard days, or mums or fathers that are trapped at home with annoying kids end up making a lot of impulse purchases online. It's because it's like a low resilience dopamine hit.
Like with Amazon, for me, it's like a website like Amazon. It's less about price and it's more about a general kind of sense of value. So it's without necessarily having to buy from some dodgy website that you've never heard before. You know you're getting like a relatively competitive price, even if it's not the cheapest of the online options. It's like it's still going to be like, there's probably not going to be a single bricks and mortar shop that will sell it for cheaper than
and you can return it.
Plus, you've got like all those add-ons, like the return, the delivery is quick. You don't have to go to the shops, and choice. So you've got like such a vast array of products to choose from, and there's virtually no product that you can't buy. And so it's the whole package in that sense, right? And I think that's the appeal of like Amazon, more so than it's cheap. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And some of the products, I would say, like, you know, they're not necessarily that cheap. So, I mean, I just sort of think about like even just an item like a phone, like a mobile phone. And absolutely, like, mobile phones today are so much more like that. We've got, you know, if you're comparing like for like, it's not like a mobile phone today is the equivalent of like a mobile phone from like 20 years ago. But nonetheless, like nowadays, like if you want the flagship mobile phone, you're kind of looking at a couple of grand. Whereas,
like a laptop price.
Yeah, like whereas, you know, 20 years ago, the top of the line phone might be $300, you know, so it's, or, you know, maybe something like in that order of magnitude, like maybe more than that, but nothing like $2,000. So, and I think that's marketing. That's what good marketing should be. It should be saying, well, let's position this product as something that people want to spend like a higher share of their household income on. And that's what they're doing, right? And there's other products like that. But then on the other hand, you get other products where, you know, they've just become cheaper, like as a category, right? So I don't know. I've sort of pared back. I think I've pared back my...
Yeah, you've come to your senses.
Yeah.
Do you ever feel like you're out of control? Do you ever feel like you are becoming addicted to purchases, especially online purchases?
I think I probably have had moments where I'm like looking online just at Amazon. Just for like, just to see if there's something worth buying. And that's not a good place to be. I'm not there now. Like I haven't been, maybe during COVID, I was kind of, sorry, YouTube and cooking shows and seeing the products that they use is like, that's for me is like the bait. Like that's, I will like launch at that. Like when I see someone using like those, microplane things, I've got to have one of those because they're all using it. And like they even say, like they're not even advertised, like they're not even paid to say it, but say, oh, you got to get yourself one of these if you don't. Like, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I have to get one. Like the YouTubers like saying I have to get it. So I've bought products, like a lot of products in that sort of spirit. Yeah.
I think it's also, for me, like it's the advent of the prosumer product, the prosumer anything, right? Like whether it's a coffee machine that used to be, you know, they've scaled down a cafe version, you know, a 20, 30 grand cafe version down into a $2,000 machine or whatever it is. They, you know, you've got overpowered laptops, incredibly capable cameras, and you trick yourself into, you know, you're going to make all this content and all this kind of expression, creative kind of expression. Like the prosumer mindset is something that's really seeped in, like into every single category where you want the best. And they can give you such bang for buck nowadays that in a lot of ways, you know, they do deliver on expectations, but everything across the board just goes up, right? Like in price. You're into this new stratospheric level of price because it's all prosumer.
So do you think there's like the concept of like toy inflation? So, because I think that's what I've experienced. So the thing that would have appealed to you 20 years ago or 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, that you would have been excited for a product that was like, say, $100, right? That could have like been exciting, right? But now like $100 item, it's just like a dime a dozen, right? And so it's actually now like the $500 item or the $1,000 item. Like it takes products of that kind of cost to give you the same like hedonistic punch that like,
yeah,
what 100, like think about when you were a kid, right? How easily pleased you were as a kid with probably a $20 item, right? And it just keeps growing and growing and growing because you get more and more used to that grade of product.
Definitely. And you know what's really stark for me? It's how the toys have inflated in price. So exactly what you said, but how something that was like a benchmark luxury item or something that you craved as a kid, like a TV, like a big flat screen TV, that has either stagnated or reduced in price. And now there's this uncanny crossover where you can get like an incredible, big, new, thin TV for like $2,000, but yet the drone you want is $2,000 as well. You know what I mean? Like, or maybe even you can make that same argument for $1,000. And I think that's where it's weird. It's like, actually, you might be buying like an expensive item, but it's like the same price as TV. And TV, like a TV used to be such a big deal in the family house, right? Like an upgrade of a TV was a big deal. And now they're so cheap.
When's the last time you went TV shopping?
Oh, yeah. Well, I've kind of dubbed myself in because I've actually just bought a new TV, but before that, it was literally like I hadn't bought a new TV for like 9 years.
All right. So reflecting on your most recent like TV shopping experience. So, and this is what I noticed in like the TV segment, but like I think this is true in a lot of different markets or different product markets where you go into like a JB Hi-Fi or a Harvey Norman, whatever. You look at all the TVs, right? And there seems to be two markets going on. There's the like, this is actually the fashionable end of the market. That if you want like, if you're house proud, you need to be looking at these TVs. And, then they'll have the range. They'll have, these are the small ones, these are the mid-sized ones, these are the large ones. And they'll be twice the price of this other separate parallel market that's going on. It's like these TVs are like the same size as the more expensive ones, only that like they're literally half the price. But there'll be Chinese brands, there'll be maybe even like there'll be like Kogan branded TVs, whatever. Like and so now I raise this as well in the context of like your SM7B microphone purchase. Like how much of it is about like the brand name and like it fitting part of like a broader, the marketing has worked. It's like, it's so effective. It's like, no, this is like, if you are like the self-actualization or the aspirational part of the product is like, cause like I got to admit, like I go into these like shops and I look at the $1,000, I don't know, Hisense or whatever. And then I look at the $2,000 Samsung or whatever, same size. Don't actually see much difference between the products.
It's so true. I mean, I think it's a little bit different with TVs because for a long time, I don't know how it is now, but for a long time, you could either buy a premium brand manufacturer like a Samsung, a Sony, an LG, or you could risk it. And the risk was probably much greater back in the day, and now they're probably caught up, right? So, like the ultimate gamble would be, okay, look, I want a really big TV. I want a 65-inch TV. I could pay, like $3,000 for that TV and get a premium Samsung product, or I could risk it all and go into the Aldi super buys and buy like the equivalent 65-inch Braun branded TV or whatever it is called. For like,
do you have a Braun TV?
No, I don't. No, for like $800 or whatever, and like save $2,000. Like that's a gamble you could take, but I guarantee you would have more problems with that TV, and that doesn't attract me, right? Like that doesn't do it for me. I have the mentality I would rather kind of stick within your budget and get something that that you can trust, especially when it comes to a TV. But now that's what I mean. The culture behind it's different. It's more disposable. People like obviously are turning over TVs way more than I think, or they're just like jamming stuff. The most egregious example of it is the outdoor TV. Have you gone to someone's house and they got like the outdoor TV?
Well,
like, that's crazy.
I have an outdoor TV, except it's just a normal TV that I have outdoors.
But like, it's just things things have changed. And
But like, okay, I'm gonna go into defense for the shitty end of the spectrum. I'm thinking about Chinese products, like specifically in Chinese brands, because I think we have a real hang up as like Western consumers of like accepting that a Chinese brand is like fit for purpose in our household. So,
do you mean like electronics?
Everything. So yeah, electronics, definitely, like TVs, like Hisense, and like think about fridges and stuff like that. Now, maybe like with a TV, you could say, yeah, okay, yes, you're right. Like, yes, it's the same size, but like what you're not looking at is like, you know, the number of nits or whatever in the screen, or it's the refresh rate or some, you know, some other, you know, technical aspect, or where it's inferior or whatever. Or, you know, you could say some quality, like last thing, but like, you know, a lot of these fucking like top-notch brands, like they fail too, right? They fuck up as well. Like, I think now, like, you would probably find the failure rate between the Chinese brand and the like.
I'm willing to concede things have moved on.
Yeah, like, but like, there's still like this massive handicap that like
about the prestige though, like it's like a status thing.
Nah, yeah, it's definitely a status thing. It's definitely a prestige thing. Let me give you a really like real world example, right? Have you seen like any of these like luxury Chinese cars that have? Well, they're in the market in China, so they're like obviously being sold in China, but they haven't really entered the Australian market, but they're kind of on the precipice of doing so, right? And you look at these cars, and they are like literally, like, you know how like Tesla's kind of revolutionized not just the electric car aspect, but they also like the user experience. So they had like all these like cool features and things beyond just that they're an electric car. So this is like that, but like on steroids. So they have all these like features like touch screens within the car to like open the door, like just all these extra features. They feel premium. Oh, sorry, they look premium. There's no way you could look at those products and say that they are not more like, they aren't like objectively better than like the best of the European cars have to offer. Like they just have more features. They are better. Now they might fail, like they might have problems and all that, but they are categorically and fundamentally a different product. It's like almost like a moonshot. Like they've overtaken what European cars have been, and like they've got new things now. But there's just no way that Australian consumers or Western consumers are going to buy the concept of a luxury Chinese car. It just isn't.
Like an oxymoron.
I'm not going to talk about, and just to be clear, I'm not necessarily talking about like the performance of the underlying vehicle, the engine and all that sort of stuff. I'm talking about like the bells and whistles inside the car, right? So it's got that, like the classic example would be the luxury MPV, right? Where it's less about the performance and more about like the feel inside.
But you know what it is, man? At the end of the day, it's about brand. It's about trusting a brand, and what usually comes with that is a heritage as well, right? Some kind of like
China's bought like MG.
But you know what I mean? That's definitely like the myth that we're all told that actually this is generations of auto workers like hand welding gears and all this kind of stuff, right? Like that it's that myth of heritage and experience, and that you're actually buying off like a master craftsman that has whatever, but in reality is all automated factory lines and things. And I think that's the thing. Can you trust this brand, right? And I think that a lot of people, unfortunately, or at least in our generation, still have a lot of bad experiences with cheaply made Chinese products, right? Like we've all had the experience of buying a toy. Like, I mean, toys are probably the worst, right? Like as a parent, you can look at some toys and you're like, this thing has a shelf life of like 2 or 3 players, yet my child wants it. And sometimes like they have to learn the hard way. You're like, that toy is going to break in the course of you trying to do what it says on the box. And sometimes, they do, and it does break. And they like, I think that people have those experiences with poorly made Chinese products. Over time, they will change. Like people had the generation before us had that same feeling around Japanese products. Right. I think the center of gravity of what's a premium product does move over time. And with cars, it's just China's not there yet.
But the irony is all those products are still made in China, right? So even or some other country in Asia, right? So whatever the product is, Like even like the Teslas that we get here in Australia are made in China. It's just that it's Tesla selling it, so there's this like broader sense of like that's your assurance mechanism.
Something weird goes on with Tesla though, man, because Tesla has the highest number of recalls out of like any of the brands. Tesla's not purely about performance. It's about being part of the movement, being part of a forward-thinking company. It's like Apple. It's not purely about the performance.
But Apple,
Japanese
Apple is perfect. Well, let's take Apple. Where are fucking Apple devices made?
But they're designed in California.
Oh, well, they must be good.
But
you know what I mean? Like
Apple's a different thing.
But they're made in China. Like the products are made in China. So I guess
is Foxconn China?
Yeah, absolutely. Foxconn is like the People's Republic of Foxconn. But like I guess with the cars, right? It's like at what point will someone accept that a good quality company that just happens to be Chinese can do essentially the same thing as what a Western company can do, which is coordinate the manufacture of high quality goods in China, because that's Western companies do the same. And in some ways, you'd think like a domestic Chinese company should be more equipped to navigate the Chinese market.
It's a trust thing, man.
Yeah, I know. I get it, but like, it's I do think that like what's happened, like yes, there's like the genuine like signal of reputation and consumers making decisions, but like what has built over time is also like the prestige and status element. So
it's a category thing too. Like I would point to something like BYD. They are almost accepted as a top range EV, right? So maybe like as a new category form,
but it doesn't have the same. It doesn't have the same status as a Tesla, right? Like,
no, but I mean, it's up there though, is what I'm saying, right? It's definitely not.
But the status piece is like crucial, right? Because I'm not gonna lie, like you're flashing your Shure SM7B in front of me as we're recording now, and like I feel that's like I think that's a power play, Roger. Like I think that's like you and your fucking pod mic, you know, like. These things, like the psychology of these products are like, I think part of like our aspiration, right?
Yeah, aspirational.
It's like, you know, and I think
I'll give you a really good example too. Like now we're in this, like if we're talking about like nothing is more egregious than Swiss watches, right? So the Swiss watches, right, which are purely mechanical, they are actually engineering. From an engineering point of view, they are marvels that they can actually do what they do, incredibly finely tuned to such a fine degree of perfection. The Chinese manufacturers can make replicas of these watches that take expert watchmakers hours to authenticate, where they have to take off the back, look through all the gears, and even then sometimes they can be fooled. Yet the replica is literally worthless, worth a couple of $100, and the Rolex or the Swiss watch literally can sell for upwards of like 60 grand. Isn't that crazy? When an expert can't even tell the difference.
Yeah. Well, it's the sheepskin effect. It's got to be the real thing, right?
But they've made the genuine real thing to a degree where, like, I mean, the other great example is natural diamonds versus lab diamonds. Like, we are beyond the scope of like a cubic zirconia or a moissanite posing as a diamond. They have science, and in the lab, they've managed to manufacture a diamond, and it's the same molecule. It's like the same. It's the same thing. It's made of the same like atomic structure. You cannot tell the difference.
All right? Let's round out with something like a little bit fun. I think in the past we've made a reference to like our best purchases, like the things that I think we have done this in a previous episode. I might be like completely confabulating that, but anyway, I think we have. Let's do the reverse. Like, let's do like the worst. Like, what was I thinking? Kind of
so many.
Like, just a handful, like 2 or 3.
All right. One of my worst would probably be, I bought this ridiculous guitar. It's a Dave Mustaine Megadeth Flying V guitar. It's like a Flying V guitar and painted on the Flying V body. angel wings covered in blood, and it's called the Angel of Death. And it has sat under the stairs. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, at the time Dave Mustaine was still on drugs. I'm like, he'll probably die and this guitar will be worth a lot. he's like on a health kick and he's going to live forever. So yeah, that's probably one of my worst purchases, a giant Flying V guitar.
All right. Do you know, I was sort of thinking one way to do this is to, think back to some recent purchases, but I've sort of thought, another way is I can just like look at my line of sight and I can already see about 5 or 6 of them right in front of me.
The graveyard.
Yeah. So I'm going to zip through. I'm going to zip through like my list that's just literally in front of me. I've got a vinyl player on
records.
This. Yeah. That's sitting on the shelf there, and I'm kind of, well, for one, it's not plugged into anything, so I couldn't listen to like. It's just sitting there, and I.
Oh man, yeah. This is so weird though, because as I was in JB Hi-Fi the other day, I saw the vinyls. I'm like, am I at the age now where actually getting a vinyl player, like getting a record player, is actually cool?
So I think what happened is I kind of got into the notion of like collecting vinyls, as in acquiring vinyl records, before it became like a thing. Oh, sorry. That's a bit of a hubristic statement. Yeah, no, but like what I mean to say is that all the vinyls I've bought, like I literally bought for like $3, $4, $5, right? You cannot buy a secondhand vinyl nowadays for under like, they're all like $30, something like that. And I think what's happened is it's just been like this market of, if there's like a mainstream, like if you're not buying like, Elvis has Christmas with Bing Crosby or something, right? From Grandma's collection. Like you're literally buying, like if you're buying actual albums, like they're going to be inflated in price. So I bought a couple of albums. Actually, I bought some in America and lugged them around back from the States, but they were like $2 or $3. So I kind of had them then, and I've got this like little, small, like not a huge collection, but I've got like maybe 20 vinyls, something like that. And then so you get the player, but like I just don't listen to them. Like it's just not. You have the best of visions, and anyway, so that's one. I'm also looking at like on this desk right now, and like I'm not like totally down on this purchase, but it did cost a little bit of money, and the reason I wanted to buy it is the most superficial, bad reason to buy it. But I've got like a MIDI keyboard on my desk.
Oh, I've forgotten about your MIDI keyboard.
And do you know like but the word, it gets worse though. Like the MIDI keyboard, like I actually think it's a good product to just have generally, because it does unlock a few options, but like I just remember my motivation for buying it was so superficial. It was purely because I wanted to like play Jump by Van Halen. Like I thought it
was from Stranger Things as well.
No. That was like a post hoc. Like that's like my son wanted to do that, but I was like, I want to recreate the synth lines in Jump, and I need a fucking MIDI keyboard to do.
That's so good.
And I bought this. It was like in the height of like the excesses of COVID. That's another one.
That's a good one.
I'm also looking at what was the other one I picked out? I've got that. Remember when we bought webcams? Like we bought these like expensive, and like they kept fucking up, and like I couldn't be bothered to return mine, so I'm just
the Elgato.
Yeah, the Elgato webcam, not a good buy. Don't buy it.
You can get lost in content creation stuff for sure.
Yeah. All right. That's my tour of duty.
I've got so many. All right. Let me rule some out. Like I've got a lot of specialty cooking stuff that is not great. Actually, I'll start with some of my bachelor purchases. When I was young, I decided to buy a serious sound system, like a proper sound system. I'm not sure if you still remember it, but it was like, I lived in an apartment as well. But they were like proper tower speakers, like in black piano finish. And it was like the 7-piece surround sound system, and like the subwoofer was like as big as a cabinet. And the tower speakers, the front speakers were like, as tall. They were almost like 5'5", and just like the whole thing. And then things just switched on me, right? Like to everything's wireless and minimal and sound bars and everything like that. And yeah, just never use it. Like, I'll never sit down and blast a movie or listen to music like in that way anymore. And it's actually like, sometimes I feel quite sad about that, because it is undoubtedly the best way to listen to music, but it's just not how we live anymore. We don't sit on the couch surrounded by 7 speakers and stay in that one place and listen to music anymore. Like, that's not what happens. Like, you're walking around, you know, you take your portable speaker with you, or you have headphones in, or whatever it is. So that's just like a really big purchase for me at the time, and it's just now useless. Like, we don't use it. It's all like wired, and like, you got wires going everywhere, and you just don't use it. So that's definitely one. I think that again, not all hobbies are made equal, and there was a brief time where I was really into poker, and I went quite crazy. I made my own poker table. I don't know whether you remember this, or whether you were in the country for this time. I made like a full-on poker table with like a padded vinyl thing that you lean on, the felt, everything like that. I bought like proper card dealing system that you slide out like you see in the casino. I had like a full chip set with like weighted chips and stuff for the gambling, the whole set, the whole 9 yards. And that is now like relegated somewhere to obscurity. So that was definitely a hobby that kind of flew by. And also, like, when I was younger, I was really obsessed with having alcohol, like different kind of spirits and things like that. But I couldn't really afford really high-end spirits. So they were all like trashy spirits, like bourbons, cheap bourbons and Jim Beams and stuff like that. And I also complemented that with, I'm not sure if you remember this, but a shitload of like glassware. Like, I was really, really interested in glassware and crystal. And I had, I bought these, like most men, you're highly suggestible from the media that you watch a movie and then all of a sudden you want to buy what the character's doing or what they're doing, whatever. And I think I was watching Beer Fest at the time, and they were drinking out of these crystal boots called dust boots. And like, it was the final challenge for them after the Beer Olympics, where they had to like drink this 2 liters of beer, almost like a Jahr glass, but it was in the shape of a crystal German boot. And so I custom ordered 2 of these boots from Germany, and like they arrived, and they're huge. They're these like huge fucking crystal boots that you put beer into, and they have like all the insignia of like the German wheat beer brands and stuff like that on them. And I had 2 of them, and I was so proud of them. And I was like, in my early 20s at the time. I even, in my bachelor pad, bought an IKEA glass cabinet that had like the downlight on it, and I professionally lit it like in a display. And I had bought all these like little tiny boot steins to go with it. So I had like this boot themed
do you know,
rack of crystals and glass.
Just as a general comment, anyone who has bought anything that they think belongs in one of those IKEA downlight displays, it's like fits the bill for like
the collector. Yeah.
This ain't.
Do you remember those boots?
I think I was overseas at the time.
I think you were in China. Yeah.
Yeah. That was.
But yeah, that's got to be one of the worst.
Yeah.
That's got to be one of the worst.
Yeah. Okay. All right. But it probably, all of those like pale into comparison to the car.
The car. Oh, the car. Come on.
Well, just from the point of view of like, the money pit of it, and that you sold it and got rid of it and bought a Honda Jazz, right? You know what I mean?
Well, at least I learned my lesson. I always say to everyone that, so what Andy's referring to is that when I was in high school, I was like gearing up to be a real gearhead and loving cars. And I ordered a Japanese import, which was a Lexus Sora. It was like this big twin-turbo old luxury car from the 90s that was imported from Japan. And it was very futuristic at the time, like totally digital dash, but nothing worse than an old luxury car. And it was just this money pit. It was expensive to run. It would break down. It was like a boat. It couldn't stop. It couldn't turn, but it was very powerful. And yeah, I always say to everyone, the best time to get being a car guy out of your system is young, when you can't afford much. And then you realize how bad it is owning one of these cars. And then you go responsible for the rest of your life. Like, that's the best way. If you become a car guy when you do have money, oh man, that's even worse.
Well, I did have a conversation with my son today in the car, and we were trying to identify underrated and overrated cars. And I said my call for most overrated car was the G-Wagon.
Oh, the G-Wagon. How many G-Wagons are you seeing?
No, but like I think they're just overrated, like because they're very expensive, and I don't know if
Yeah.
for what value.
I think it's like a street culture thing because so many rappers have G-Wagons, right? It becomes like a trendy. It's like wearing Nike, Air Jordan 1s. They're really uncomfortable, but it's like a stylish thing.
But wouldn't you rather go like a top of the line, like the most like kitted out, expensive, like Toyota Land Cruiser?
You want a Land Cruiser over a G-Wagon?
Well, that would give you more actual cred, wouldn't it?
I mean, not in the kind of celebrity culture.
not on the streets of like,
You're not going to see Jay-Z in a Land Cruiser.
Well, maybe in Qatar you would.
No, you're thinking of a Hilux.
No, but like those like there's like Land Cruisers, like the Prado kind of variety that you see here.
Yeah.
But then there's like Land Cruisers, like there's like a whole thing of like Land Cruisers of like worth a few $100,000.
Yeah. But the thing you realize about all of this, right, like growing up, and I think this is a lesson that some people learn and some people don't learn. And the people that don't learn are the ones that are always fighting against this addiction around shopping and their money. And it's about this idea of like, very few things in this world are unobtainable for middle-class people. It's a matter of priorities. And you know that because you meet some people who deal in these very lavish, expensive luxury goods at the expense of other things in their life, like whether it would be debt or home ownership or whatever it is, right? Like you've met them. People, you've got friends that show up in different designer handbags, every couple of months. You've got people that earn an average salary, but they're rocking a BMW M3. People who are wearing like, Gucci and LV and designer stuff, even though they're not rich. Like, it just gets their hooks into some people, and you realize like there's nothing special about having an LV bag. There's nothing special about driving a BMW M3, and there's definitely nothing special about having that on credit. But it's just the choices that you make, right? And like the sooner you break that spell that having an M3 or an LV bag actually means that like there's something special about this person, or whatever, or it doesn't signal the fact that they're rich. They could just be in debt, or they could just choose to spend all their money on that versus, travel or other assets or whatever it is. Like, I think that's the thing, right? Like some people get stuck in that and they don't learn that lesson. And I've got no problem with a rich guy acting like a rich guy, but I've got a problem with people pretending they're rich at the expense of like the people they need to look after, the cost to their actual life, their credit, the stress that being in debt causes you. And I think that's the problem. And I think there's a big majority, like there's a big group of people who are like that.
Yeah, I agree. Well, I'll enjoy my Louis Vuitton sheets and Gucci pillow.